Hey guys, welcome back to some more Raid Shadow Legends. Today's video, we're going to be breaking down the new champions that are joining us in Shadow Legends, but also looking at the account. We just hit level 30, so we didn't unlock the Forge. Gem Mine is already at 2, and we have a lot of champions that we're progressing in, getting a lot more to 4 stars, going to start moving them to 5 stars, and we are 3 days into Raid at this point, so absolutely crushing it. Love playing this game. It's really cool. So let's hop over, take a look at all of the new champions that we're seeing that are being introduced. This is the list of March champions. Want to run through some of the skills and abilities, kind of give you my insight or give me my thoughts on what we have here. Now, the first one is Theodisi, support Undead Horde. Now, you'll notice right here there are 2 different symbols. This champion has the ability to switch between these, which we'll look at. I don't know, and knowing there is an incredible amount of champions within Raid, I don't know exactly how many do possess the skill, but it is really unique to me, being newer to the game, and overall the champion looks incredible. So attacks one enemy, we have a little bit of heal in there, fills the champion's turn meter. So not only are we going to have a heal, but we're also going to have a little bit of damage in here, but it is also going to turn meter, which means they're going to be able to use all of their skills faster. Looking at Deranged Fortitude, remove all debuffs from the ally. Now I have the mage right now, the support hero that removes all the debuffs, and I love the Perfect Bale buff on all allies except this champion for 2 years. Places a Stone Skin buff on the champion for 1 turn. So they are going to buff not only your entire team, but also buff this champion itself. Now you have to remember that you really have most of the support heroes that we've seen within this game really go one of either 2 ways. Either it's very, very strong when it comes to the heal, when it comes to the revive, when it comes to everything of that nature, or they are a buffer by nature. Now revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. That is huge, especially when you get to this level 3 for that cooldown -2. Places an unkillable buff on all allies for 2 turns. PvP wise, that's going to be pretty big. Transforms this champion into the alternate form. Metamorph, this is the very cool ability that I haven't really seen coming from a lot of other games. This is an ability, again, that I really haven't seen, is switching this champion into another champion, which again, we'll look at in just a minute. Every 7 turns, equalizes the HP of allies. They're going to bring them all in line with the average. So thinking of bringing that average up, keeping this higher, is going to be from the damage mitigation for every 2%. So stacking up to 25%. So this champion is going to bring a 25% damage mitigation factor, as well as going in here and maximizing these HP or equalizing the HP every 7 turn. Increase ally speed. I like that, again, PvP aspect. Then this is the altered form. So again, this goes into a lot more damage than we see support. Destroys the target speed. So the first one was kind of a buffer. This one looks like it's a really, really strong debuffer. Decreases the turn meter 5% for each ally alive, and additional 2.5 for each enemy alive. Ignores resistance right down there. Attacks all enemies before attacking. Steals all buffs from all enemies. Again, PvP, you're going to be able to take everything from the enemy team, every single buff that they have, which is going to be awesome to go ahead and steal this. Ignoring the resistance right here, places a block buffs debuff, and a 60% defense decrease buff for 2 turns. Again, kind of crazy if the enemy speed is lower than the champion's speed, so you definitely want speed on this champion. Debuffs will be protected, which is awesome. Places asleep, so now we have crowd control in there, decreased speed as well within here, ignoring again the resistance. PvP going to be huge. Transform the champion back into the other champion. So you can see this is on a 4-turn cooldown. So every 4 turns, these are going to swap back and forth. The champion is immune to block active skills debuffs, which is very cool. And then, of course, the aura. Now, this is one that we've seen in a lot of the content, in a lot of the promotions. This is around the 6th anniversary. The Lord Entertainer Fabian, you can see another support class that we're getting, or another support type that we're getting. Each hit steals 10% of the turn meter, placing True Fear. Now, this one seems, again, a lot more focused on the crowd control aspect, because attacking one enemy places a petrification. True Fear is coming out again, debuff for 2 turns on all other enemies who are not under fear or True Fear. So again, massive crowd control in there. The passive effect to this activates when the enemy is under fear or True Fear. Debuff successfully uses a skill. Multiple champions on the team with the skill, only one will activate. Then you look at some of the damage. So attacking all enemies with a spectral flourish before attacking has a 75% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs. So you think of one of our champions or stealing all the buffs. This one is reducing the duration by 75%. So if you have some really strong buffs in there, this is going to mitigate a lot of it. 75% chance to increase the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 3 turns. So not only are you taking away the buffs, you're taking away the ability to actually go ahead and use all of their skills. And then it goes back into the True Fear. Ghost with the most. I like the ability in here. Whenever an enemy is revived, places the True Fear buff. So if you do have the revive in there, it is going to provide a True Fear buff when the enemy is actually brought back to life, which is crazy. Ally speed, again. Then we look at some of our damage dealers. Now this one looks awesome. You can see the tusks in here in the big warhead. The first axe Tuskor. This, of course, is an Ogarin Tribes attack hero. And looking at this hero, and I was kind of breaking it down and comparing it to the champions that I have right now, attacks one enemy 2 times. I love the double attack, not only doing an incredible amount of damage in here, but has a 25% chance to grant an extra turn. So if you're going in here with this attack, attacks one enemy 2 times, when you think of fighting bosses, this could essentially get the extra turn, giving you another big buff in there. Reminds me a lot of the Supreme Galak that I have with the 2-time attack that he already possesses. Attacks all enemies. The damage inflicted by the skill increases by 10% for each buff on this champion. So if you're running a team that has a very large buff capacity, this, of course, is going to amplify the damage that this champion is doing. Decreases the cooldown of the skill by 1 turn if the enemy attack kills an enemy. And if this kills 2 or more enemies, grants this champion an extra turn. So now we have 2 abilities that are going to give some extra turn. Attacks one enemy 2 times before attacking, places a 50% increased damage buff and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. Will ignore shield buffs. That is crazy. So has the ability to buff the increased attack by 50% and also the crit damage. So this champion just needs a good 100% crit. Then, of course, buffing up the attack and the crit damage. This damage could go super, super high in here. Each extra turn this champion gets increases the crit damage by 10%, stacking to 50%. Each extra turn also decreases the damage they receive up to 50%. So you have a 50% crit damage amplification. You have a 50% decrease to damage that this champion is taking. Increases all allies in battle by 30%. Then we have an Orc in here and another legendary Void defense. So not quite the offensive that we just seen. This is more of the tank build with Colwyn Branch Breaker. So Timbermaker attacks one enemy before attacking, removes a random buff, which I like. This effect cannot be resisted if the champion is under a shield buff. Definitely want a shield, definitely wants survivability. Places a block revive, that could be huge. And then increases the value of any shield buff on this champion by 30% of damage dealt. Cannot increase more than 10,000. So they even had to cap the shield that he has on here. Barkbreaker attacks all enemies. Increases the percent of the target's defense equal to 15%. 50% of the difference between this champion's max HP and any shields. So building and getting a higher max HP on here could really make a big difference. Also destroys each target's max HP by 20%. If they're stacking more HP, this of course is going to have a bigger effect. This effect will ignore any shield buff. So this is going straight through even if you are buffed. Hardy Soul places a shield buff proportionate to the champion's defense. So again, thinking of stacking HP and defense on here, going to make a difference, and a 25% strengthen buff on all allies. Again, thinking in conjunction with the last champion we just looked at, giving the buffs on there to buff up the damage. And then removes the debuff from this champion at the start of the turn. Anything that can get the debuffs off of these champions, absolutely like it. At the start of every 4th turn, removes all debuffs from them and places a 60% increased defense buff for 2 turns. I like it. Increases the champion's defense by 3% up to that 30 stack. And then allies' defense goes up 33%, which is kind of crazy. Then we have a magic Shadowkin, Tetsui the Deliverer. Definitely another attack type right here. Attacking one enemy fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% if this attack is critical. So running a 100% critical on there, or critical rating, making sure this is going to crit, gives it a big buff in there. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Again, the one enemy 2 times I like. Will place 2 extra hits if the target's turn meter is less than 50%. That's going to make a big difference. Ignore a percentage of the target's defense. Resets the cooldown if the target is killed, which is awesome. This one, the Deceptive Prescience, attacks one enemy, stealing the target's turn meter, places the True Fear. So again, back to the other champion, Fabian, places the True Fear on there. Now, Shadowkin Unity, faction ally, faction allies, or faction allies. So turn meter steals the effect, and True Fear debuff cannot be resisted or blocked. Increase the damage inflicted by the skill based on the champion's speed and the target speed. So if you're buffing speed on this champion itself, going to have more an effect. Will also attack other enemies with more than 50% turn meter, stealing 100% of the current target's turn meter and true fearing them, which is awesome. And then the Scourge of Meekage fills this champion's turn meter by 15%. Whenever a champion takes a turn, there are multiple champions on the team with the skill, only one will activate. So again, if you're stacking the champions, not going to make a big difference. Faction ally goes ahead and buffs up that 20% more effective for the turn meter. Turn meter effect used on enemies are 20% less effective. And then whenever the champion has their turn meter filled, increase the damage of the next attack by 5%. Look at this, increases ally speed by 19, increases ally crit rating by 15, only applies to the Shadowkins. Then we have a legendary. Now guys, traditionally, when we're playing these games, you would usually get one champion at a time. It's kind of incredible that all of these champions are kind of coming down the pipeline. Here is another support, and it is a Force Barbarian in here. Dune Herald Zaharis. So Hawk Strike attacks one enemy, 75% chance of stealing the turn meter. It seems like all of these skills are very, very similar. 75% chance of applying the debuff spread effect, taking 2 random debuffs and placing them on all enemies. If you're running some champions together that debuff, that could be absolutely huge. The Herald speaks before attacking, 75% chance of stealing all buffs from the target enemy, and then applies a buff spread effect, all buffs from this champion, placing them on all allies. Very, very cool ability. Block buffs in there, block after active skills, debuff on the target, places 1 intercept on a target ally, also places the block debuff and the increased speed on there. Start of the round, places a 50% increased accuracy, which is awesome, on all allies for 3 turns. That's pretty big right at the beginning. Getting all the dots and getting all the debuffs up out of there. Ally speed go by 20%. Then we have a Light Warder, Siendra. Very cool looking. Again, another Void hero for the High Elves. Very similar to the one that we already have, but this, remember, is an epic hero. It is not a legendary, meaning you have a lot higher chance of actually picking this one up. Attacks one enemy, has a 25% chance of stealing 1 random buff from a target. If the attack is critical, which we have to stack the gear on there, 100% chance of stealing the buff, 1 random buff from the target instead. 1 attack 2 times like we've traditionally seen. Each hit, 75% stealing of the target's turn meter. If it's critical, it goes to 30%. Resplendent Burst attacks all enemies before attacking, has an increased accuracy, 30% increased crit rate, buff on this champion for 2 turns. So again, buffing up. Then we need to spread that to the rest of the team. Increase the champion's attack by 2% for each buff they have up to 30. Again, buffing team going to make a big difference. And then the Hide Stitcher Borin. This, of course, is a rare one, which I believe this is available, Skinwalkers. That I've seen this one in Fabian, I've seen as well. Staff Smasher, 1 enemy, 50% chance of placing, again, decreased attack. So we have a big debuff in there. 25% for an increased resistance buff, and then places shields on heroes as well with the Skin Sealer ability. And then the Hide Stitcher heals all allies for 15%. Like we said earlier, you either have the ability of healing, turn meter, shielding, buffing, decreasing, or you have the ability of kind of doing the buffing or the debuffing. This hero or this champion here does do the healing itself. So, all right, guys, so that is going to do it for a lot of different champions that are absolutely pivotal when it comes to the champions that we're getting within here. Very, very cool to see all of the new champions that we're getting. Hopefully in the future, we're going to have a really good chance of picking them up. But that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.